Welcome to Cheating Story Exposed. Please subscribe. My name is Walter, and I'm 68 years old. I've spent most of my life building things, businesses, properties, relationships. I've learned that the most valuable things you build aren't always visible to others. Today, I want to share a story about family, respect, and the dangerous assumption that age equals irrelevance. It was a Thursday evening in late September when everything came to a head. My daughter Patricia had organized what she called a family summit dinner at Marcello's, an upscale Italian restaurant downtown. I should have known something was brewing. Patricia only organized formal dinners when she wanted to control the narrative of a conversation. I arrived 15 minutes early, as I always do. Old habit from my years running a manufacturing company. If you're on time, you're late. The hostess recognized me and led me to a private dining room in the back. The table was set for 8 people. I took a seat near the middle, positioning myself where I could see everyone's faces. Patricia arrived next with her husband, Glenn. Then came my grandson Brandon and his wife, Kayla. Brandon is 28, works in tech marketing, and has the kind of confidence that comes from never having experienced real failure. Kayla is 26, comes from money, and has opinions about everything except her own privilege. My son Thomas showed up with his girlfriend, Denise. Thomas is 42, divorced, and has spent most of his adult life trying to prove he doesn't need my advice while secretly hoping I'll solve his problems. Denise seemed nice enough, though I'd only met her twice before. The last to arrive was Patricia's younger sister, my daughter Caroline, who flew in from Seattle. Caroline is 39, a software engineer, and the only one of my children who regularly calls just to talk rather than to ask for something. "Dad, you look well," Patricia said, kissing my cheek. There was something rehearsed about it. "I feel well," I replied. "Though I'm curious why we're all here, you were rather cryptic on the phone." "Let's order first," she said, avoiding my eyes. "Then we'll talk." The meal started pleasantly enough. We discussed Caroline's latest project, Thomas's new girlfriend, and Brandon's recent promotion. I noticed, however, that Kayla kept glancing at Patricia and Glenn kept checking his watch. Something was orchestrated here. After the main course was cleared, Patricia cleared her throat. "So, Dad, we wanted to talk to you about some concerns we've been having." "Concerns?" I set down my water glass. "About your living situation," Glenn interjected. "We think it might be time to consider some changes." I felt Caroline tense beside me. "What kind of changes?" I asked calmly. Brandon leaned forward, his expression one of practiced sympathy. "Grandpa, we love you, but you're living alone in that big house. You're getting older. We worry about you." "I'm 68, not 98, I said. "I'm in excellent health. I play tennis twice a week and still consult for my old company." "That's actually part of the concern," Patricia said. "Thomas mentioned you seemed confused last month when he visited. You couldn't remember where you'd put some documents." I turned to Thomas. "I was reorganizing my office. The documents you're referring to were exactly where I told you they were, in the filing cabinet. You just didn't look properly." Thomas shifted uncomfortably. "Well, it seemed like you were having trouble." "Trouble? Or were you having trouble listening?" I kept my voice level, but I could feel the temperature in the room changing. Kayla spoke up then, her voice having that particular tone young people use when they think they're being helpful but are actually being condescending. "Mr. Anderson, no one is saying you're incapable. We just think you'd be happier in a community setting. There are beautiful senior living facilities where you'd have activities, meals prepared, people your own age to socialize with." "People my own age," I repeated. "You mean warehouses where families put parents they find inconvenient?" "Dad, that's not fair," Patricia said. "These are luxury communities. Some of them are nicer than regular homes." "Then you move there," I said. The table went quiet. Brandon broke the silence. "Look, Grandpa, here's the thing. The house you're living in, it's valuable, really valuable. That neighborhood has appreciated like crazy. If you sold it, you could afford the best care facility in the state and still have money left over." Money left over for whom? I asked. That's not what this is about, Patricia said quickly. Isn't it? Caroline's voice cut through. Because it sounds exactly like what it's about. Glenn held up his hand. Nobody's talking about money, Caroline. We're talking about what's best for your father. My father seems perfectly capable of deciding what's best for himself, Caroline shot back. Caroline, you live 3 states away, Patricia said. You don't see the day-to-day reality. Dad's alone. He's getting forgetful. What happens if he falls, if he has a medical emergency? I have a medical alert system, I said. I have a cell phone. I have neighbors who check on me. I'm more connected than you think. Brandon was shaking his head. But it's not sustainable, Grandpa. At some point, you're going to need more help than that. Why not make the transition now while you can still adapt? Because I don't need to transition, I said firmly. I'm living exactly the life I want to live. That's when Brandon made his mistake. He looked at Kayla, then at his mother, then back at me. His expression shifted from sympathetic to frustrated. Okay, I'm just going to say what everyone's thinking. Grandpa, you're being selfish. The word hung in the air like smoke. Selfish, I repeated quietly. Yes, selfish. You're holding onto this huge house. That one person doesn't need while. He stopped himself. While what, Brandon? Kayla put her hand on his arm, but he shook it off. While some of us could actually use the equity. You know, Kayla and I have been trying to upgrade. You know, Thomas is still paying off his divorce. You know, Mom and Glenn have been wanting to invest in that vacation property. So this is about money, I said. It's about being practical, Brandon insisted. You're sitting on almost $1 million in real estate that you don't need. Meanwhile, your family, your actual family, is struggling. Struggling, I said. You drive a $60,000 Tesla, Brandon. That's not the point. Then what is the point? Brandon stood up, his face flushed. The point is that you're not thinking about anyone but yourself. You're not thinking about what's practical for the family. You're just being a stubborn old man who won't face reality. Brandon, sit down, Patricia hissed, but Brandon wasn't finished. He was worked up now, saying things he'd probably been rehearsing in his head. Honestly, Grandpa, at what point do we get to make decisions? At what point do we, the people who are actually going to have to deal with the consequences of your stubbornness, get a say in what happens to family assets? I remained very still. Family assets. Yes, family assets. That house isn't just yours, it's part of our family legacy. We should have a voice in what happens to it. I took a slow breath. Brandon, who do you think owns the house you're currently living in? He blinked. What, we rent it, you know that. From whom? From the management company, Prestige Properties or something. Prestige Property Management, I corrected. And who do you think owns Prestige Property Management? The color started draining from Brandon's face. You're not family, Brandon had said moments earlier. Not in anger, but as a statement of fact during his rant. You're not family anymore, Grandpa. You're just a stubborn old man sitting on assets that don't really belong to just you. The words had been said. They couldn't be unsaid. I pulled out my phone and opened a document. Brandon, in 1997, I purchased 6 residential properties in the developing Riverside district. At the time, they were considered risky investments. Everyone said that neighborhood would never appreciate. I paid a combined $400,000 for all 6 properties. I slid my phone across the table. Today, those properties are worth just over $3.2 million. I've held on to them for 27 years. 5 of them are currently rented out. The 6th one, a 3-bedroom Craftsman on Maple Street, has been occupied rent-free for the past 4 years by my grandson and his wife. Kayla grabbed the phone, her eyes scanning the document. Her face went white. That's right, I continued calmly. The house you've been living in, the one you've been renovating without asking permission, the one you've been treating as your own, I own it. Through Prestige Property Management, which I established in 1998. But the property manager, Brandon stammered. We've been dealing with some guy named Mitchell. Robert Mitchell, my attorney and property manager, yes. Did you never wonder why you never paid rent? Why every maintenance request was approved immediately? Why you were allowed to make modifications that most landlords would never permit. Patricia's face had gone pale. Dad, we didn't know. You didn't know because I didn't tell you, I said. Just like I didn't tell you about the commercial properties I own in 3 states, or the investment portfolio that's been quietly growing for decades, or the trust I established for Caroline's children. You didn't know because you never asked. You just assumed that what you could see was all there was. Glenn was staring at his plate. Thomas looked like he wanted to disappear under the table. Brandon found his voice. Grandpa, I shouldn't have said. No, you should have, I interrupted. Because now we all know where we stand. You don't see me as family, Brandon. You see me as an obstacle to what you believe you're entitled to. That's not true. You just told me in front of everyone here that I'm not thinking about my actual family. You told me I'm being selfish for not liquidating my assets so that you and others can upgrade your lives. You questioned when you get to make decisions about family assets. Well, let me be very clear, you don't. I stood up slowly, placing my napkin on the table. Here's what's going to happen. Brandon, you and Kayla have 60 days to find new accommodations. The property on Maple Street will be listed for rent at market rate. If you'd like to apply as tenants and pay the going rate of $3,200 a month, you're welcome to submit an application like anyone else. Grandpa, please, Kayla's voice cracked. Please what? Please continue allowing you to live rent-free in a valuable property while you tell me I'm not family, while you lobby for me to be put in a facility so you can access what you think is yours. I looked at Patricia. As for you, Patricia, I'm disappointed. You organized this ambush. You coordinated with your brother and son to corner me into a decision I never agreed to consider. Dad, I was worried. You were worried about your inheritance, I said bluntly. Let's not pretend this was about my welfare. If you were truly concerned about me being alone, you'd visit more than twice a year. You'd call more than once a month. You'd know that I'm perfectly fine. Thomas finally spoke up. Dad, I didn't know about any of this. About the intervention plan, I mean. Patricia just asked me to come to a family dinner. And yet you corroborated her story about me being confused and forgetful, which gave everyone else ammunition for this conversation. I thought I was helping. You thought you were helping yourself, I said tiredly. Thomas, you've been dropping hints for months about needing money, about how expensive your divorce was, about how hard it is to start over at 42. I heard every single one of those hints. I turned to Caroline, who had tears in her eyes. Caroline, you're the only one here who didn't know this was coming, aren't you? She nodded. I thought it was just a family dinner. When Patricia called, she said you'd been asking about us all getting together. Of course she did. I looked back at the table. I want to be very clear about something. I'm not angry because you all want money. I understand financial pressures. I'm not even that angry about the suggestion of senior living, though I found the approach presumptuous and insulting. What makes me angry, what actually hurts, is the fundamental disrespect. I pointed at Brandon. You told me I'm not family. You meant it as rhetoric, but rhetoric reveals belief. You believe that family is transactional, that my value is measured by what I can provide you, that my autonomy is negotiable based on your assessment of my capacity. That's not what I meant, but it's what you said, and words matter, Brandon. I've spent 68 years learning that lesson. I've built businesses on the strength of my word. I've maintained friendships through decades by honoring commitments. And I've tried to teach my children and grandchildren that character is revealed in how you treat people when it doesn't benefit you. I gathered my coat from the back of my chair. I'm leaving now. Caroline, would you like to come with me? I'll take you back to your hotel. Caroline stood immediately, grabbing her purse. Dad, wait, Patricia said desperately. Can we please just talk about this? We just did, Patricia, and the conversation was very revealing. I paused. You should know that I had a meeting with my estate attorney 3 days ago. We were finalizing some adjustments to my will. After tonight, I'll be calling him to make some additional changes. Dad, please. I'm not cutting anyone out, I said. Despite what's happened here, you're still my children and Brandon is still my grandson. But the assumptions you've been making about inheritance, about your entitlement to assets I spent a lifetime building, those assumptions need correcting. Glenn finally spoke up. Walter, I think emotions are running high. Maybe we should all sleep on this and talk tomorrow. Glenn, you've barely said 2 words all night, but you knew this was coming, didn't you? You helped Patricia plan it, so please don't pretend to be the voice of reason now. I walked toward the door, Caroline beside me. As I reached it, I turned back. One more thing. Brandon, the renovations you did to the house, the kitchen remodel, the bathroom upgrades, the new deck, thank you. They've increased the property value by about $70,000. When I rent it out or sell it, that additional equity will be appreciated. Consider it your parting contribution to the family assets you're so concerned about. The drive back to Caroline's hotel was quiet for the first few minutes. Then she said softly, "Dad, I had no idea about any of it." "I know, sweetheart. Why didn't you tell us? About the properties, the investments, all of it?" I glanced at her. "Because money changes relationships, Caroline. The moment people know you have it, they start calculating, they start expecting, they start feeling entitled. I learned that lesson early in life, and I've tried to live accordingly. But we're your family, which is exactly why I didn't tell you," I said gently. "I wanted you all to build your own lives, make your own successes, struggle with your own challenges. If you'd known I had significant wealth, would you have worked as hard? Would Patricia have pushed to make partner at her firm? Would Thomas have started his business? Would you have pursued your engineering degree?" Caroline was quiet for a moment. "Probably not. Money is a tool, not an identity," I continued. "I gave all of you good educations. I helped with down payments on first homes. I provided support when it was truly needed, but I never wanted you dependent on me or worse, waiting for me to die so you could inherit." "Is that what tonight was really about?" Caroline asked. "Patricia and Brandon wanting to know what they'll inherit." "Partly," I admitted. "But it was also about control. They've decided I'm too old to manage my own affairs, that they know better than I do what's good for me. And maybe in a few years they might be right, but I'm not there yet, and I resent the presumption that I am." I pulled up to her hotel. "Caroline, I need to ask you something. When I do reach the point where I need help, when I can no longer manage on my own, will you help me make good decisions?" "Of course, Dad. I mean really help me. Not take over, not make decisions for me, but help me think through options and choose what's right for me, not what's convenient for everyone else." She squeezed my hand. "I promise." "Good. Then I want you to know something. The trust I mentioned at dinner, it's real. It's for your children's education, $50,000 for each of them, accessible when they turn 18. You're the trustee. You're the only one who knows about it now, and I'd like to keep it that way." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Dad, you didn't have to." "I wanted to. You're the one who never asked for anything. You're the one who calls just to check on me. You're the one who tonight defended my right to make my own choices. That means something, Caroline." She hugged me tightly. "What are you going to do about Patricia and Brandon?" "I don't know yet," I admitted. "I need to think, but I do know one thing: relationships built on respect can weather disagreements. Relationships built on entitlement can't. We'll see which one." We actually have. The next morning, I called Robert Mitchell, my attorney and property manager. "Walter, I heard about last night," he said. "Patricia called me at 7 this morning wanting to know if what you said about the properties was true." "What did you tell her?" "That I couldn't discuss client matters, even with family members. She was not happy." "I'm sure she wasn't." I leaned back in my chair. "Robert, I need you to start formal eviction proceedings on the Maple Street property. 60-day notice, as I stated last night." "Are you sure that's your grandson?" "I'm sure, and I need you to appraise all 6 residential properties. I'm thinking about selling 1 or 2. "Which ones?" "Not Maple Street. Despite everything, that house has good bones, and Brandon's renovations really did improve it. I'll hold on to it as a rental, but the duplex on Riverside and maybe the corner lot on Wilmington get me current values." "Will do. Anything else?" "Yes. Set up a meeting with my estate attorney for next week. I need to make some adjustments." Over the next week, my phone rang constantly. Patricia called 12 times. I answered on the 13th. Dad, please, can we just talk? We talked, Patricia, at dinner. I made a mistake. I see that now. I should never have organized that dinner the way I did. No, you shouldn't have. But Dad, you have to understand, I've been worried. You're alone in that house. What if something happens? Patricia, stop. Just stop. You weren't worried about my safety. If you were, you would have asked me about my life instead of telling me how to live it. You would have discovered that I have a cleaning service come twice a week, that I have dinner with my tennis club every Thursday, that I volunteer at the library on Mondays, and that I'm dating someone. You're what? Dating. Her name is Margaret. She's a retired teacher, 65 years old, sharp as a tack, and excellent company. We met at the library 6 months ago. I didn't mention her at dinner because I knew it wasn't actually about me sharing my life. It was about you controlling it. Silence on the other end. Margaret and I are taking a cruise next month to Alaska. I'm perfectly capable of managing my life, my finances, and my future. What I'm not capable of tolerating is being treated like an incompetent child by my own family. Dad, I'm sorry. I appreciate that, Patricia. I really do. But sorry isn't enough. You need to examine why you thought that ambush was appropriate. Why you enlisted your brother and son. Why you couldn't just ask me directly if I'd thought about future planning. I didn't think you'd listen, so you decided to force the issue. Patricia, I ran a company for 30 years. I negotiated million-dollar contracts. I managed complex business relationships. Did you really think I couldn't handle a conversation about my own housing? She was crying now. I don't want to lose you. Then stop trying to control me, I said gently. I'm your father, not your responsibility, not yet anyway. When the time comes that I need help, I'll ask for it. But that time isn't now, and I need you to respect that. Okay, she whispered. Okay, I'll respect that. And Dad, I really am sorry. I know, sweetheart, I know. The conversation with Thomas went differently. He showed up at my house unannounced, looking sheepish. Dad, can we talk? I let him in, made coffee, and we sat in the living room. Thomas looked around, really looked for the first time in probably years. The house looks great, Dad. I didn't realize how well you've been maintaining it. That's because you assumed I couldn't, I said without rancor. When's the last time you actually spent time here, really spent time, not just dropped by to ask for something? He winced. I don't know, maybe Christmas 2 years ago. 3 years ago, I corrected. You haven't been here for Christmas in 3 years. You've been here 4 times in the last year, each time for less than an hour, and each time you had your hand out. I know. Do you? Thomas, you're 42 years old. You've been divorced for 3 years. At what point do you stop blaming your problems on the divorce and start taking responsibility for your choices? That's harsh, Dad. It's honest. You wanted to invest in that restaurant. I told you it was undercapitalized. You did it anyway and lost $80,000. You wanted to day trade cryptocurrencies. I told you it was gambling. You did it anyway and lost another $50,000. Now you're struggling financially, and instead of examining your own decisions, you're looking at me and thinking I should bail you out. Thomas stared at his coffee. You're right. I know I'm right. But the question is, do you know it, or are you just agreeing because you think it's what I want to hear? He looked up, and I saw something different in his eyes, something like actual understanding. No, you're right. I've been making bad choices and expecting you to cushion the fall. And that comment about you being confused, Dad, I'm sorry. I said that because Patricia convinced me you needed help, but really I think I wanted to believe you needed help because it made me feel better about needing help myself. Now that was honest. Thomas, I'm going to tell you something I've never told you before. When I was 42, your exact age, I almost lost everything. I'd made some risky investments in my business and they weren't paying off. I was $60,000 in debt, which in 1985 was a fortune. I had 2 young kids and a mortgage, and I was terrified. Thomas looked surprised. You never mentioned that, because I didn't want you to know. I wanted you to see me as strong and successful. But the truth is, everyone struggles at some point. The difference between people who recover and people who don't is what they do next. I could have declared bankruptcy. I Could have blamed the economy or my partners or bad luck. Instead, I worked 3 jobs for 2 years, lived on nothing, and dug myself out. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but it taught me something crucial. You're only as trapped as you choose to be. What are you saying, Dad? I'm saying stop waiting for me to die so you can inherit. Stop making risky investments hoping for a quick win. Stop living like you're 25 when you're 42. Build something real. Build something sustainable. And if you need advice, actual advice, not money, I'm here. I've always been here. Thomas nodded slowly. I haven't been treating you with much respect, have I? No, you haven't, but at least you recognize it. That's more than I can say for your nephew right now. What are you going to do about Brandon? I'm going to let him experience consequences, I said simply. He's been living rent-free in a property worth $500,000. He's been taking that gift for granted while simultaneously suggesting I'm too senile to manage my own affairs. Well, now he gets to pay market rent like everyone else or find somewhere else to live. He's pretty upset. He should be, not at me but at himself. Brandon's problem is that he's never had to struggle. Everything's been easy for him. Good grades, good job, property handed to him. He's never learned the value of things because nothing's ever cost him anything. Unlike me who struggled and still made bad choices, Thomas said with a rueful smile. Exactly. You struggled and made bad choices, which means you can struggle and make good choices. Brandon hasn't even started struggling yet. This will be good for him. As Thomas left, he paused at the door. Dad, for what it's worth, I'm glad you told Patricia and Brandon off. They needed to hear it. We all did. The conversation I dreaded most came 2 weeks later. Brandon showed up without Kayla, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Grandpa, can we talk? I let him in but didn't offer coffee. We sat in the living room in silence for a moment. I've been trying to figure out what to say, Brandon finally said. I've rehearsed a dozen apologies and they all sound hollow. That's because apologies for what you said probably are hollow, I said. You meant what you said, Brandon. You've been thinking it for a while. The dinner just gave you permission to say it out loud. He didn't deny it. Yeah, I guess I have been thinking that way. And I don't have a good excuse for it, I thought. He stopped, gathering himself. I thought that because you're older, that meant you weren't as sharp, that you needed help whether you knew it or not, that it was our responsibility to make decisions for you, like I was a child. Yeah, like that. He met my eyes. I was wrong. Yes, you were, but the question is, do you understand why you were wrong? Brandon thought about it. Because I confused age with incompetence. Because I made assumptions instead of asking questions, partly. But also because you forgot something fundamental. I'm still a human being with agency, dignity, and rights. Your grandmother was 83 when she died, and up until her last month she was making her own decisions, managing her own life, living with purpose. Age doesn't erase personhood, Brandon. I know that now. Do you? Or do you know that I have money and property, and now you're recalculating your approach? That hit him hard. Is that really what you think of me? I don't know what to think of you right now, I admitted. The Brandon I thought I knew would never have said the things you said at that dinner, so either I didn't know you as well as I thought, or you've changed into someone I don't recognize. Both, maybe, he said quietly. Kayla and I have been under a lot of pressure. Her parents keep comparing us to her sister, who just bought a huge house in the suburbs. We've been trying to keep up, and I started seeing. You seeing the house as the solution to our problem instead of seeing you as my grandfather. At least that's honest. Grandpa, I'm not asking you to forgive me. Not yet. I know I need to earn that back, but I want you to know that I'm moving out of the house, not because you're evicting me, but because I need to. Kayla and I need to live within our means and stop expecting handouts, even invisible ones. That surprised me. You found a place? A 2-bedroom apartment in the West District. It's smaller, not as nice, but it's ours, and we're paying for it ourselves. And Grandpa, we're going to pay you back rent for the last 4 years. Brandon, that's not. It is necessary, he insisted. Market rate for that house would have been around $2,800 a month 4 years ago, probably $3,200 now. Split the difference, call it $3,000 a month for 48 months. That's $144,000 we owe you. I started to protest, but he held up his hand. We can't pay it all at once, but we're going to pay it. $500 a month until it's settled. I've already set up the automatic transfer. First payment goes through next week. I sat back, genuinely surprised. Brandon, you don't have to do this. Yes, I do. Not for you, for me. I need to understand the value of what I had and what I threw away. I need to stop being someone who takes and starts being someone who earns. He stood up. I'm not asking you to change the will back or give me another chance with the house. I'm just telling you that I heard you, really heard you, and I'm trying to be better. After he left, I sat alone in my living room for a long time. Margaret called around 6. How are you feeling about everything? Confused, I admitted. Hurt, a little bit hopeful. That's a reasonable combination, she said in her practical way. Want me to come over? I'll bring dinner. I'd like that. Margaret arrived an hour later with Chinese takeout and her characteristic no-nonsense warmth. We ate in the kitchen, and I told her about Brandon's visit. He's growing up, she observed. Painfully, but growing up nonetheless. I want to believe that, but part of me wonders if he's just being strategic, if he's figured out that contrition is the path back into my good graces. Maybe both things are true, Margaret said. Maybe he's genuinely learning and also hoping for reconciliation. Those aren't mutually exclusive, Walter. You're probably right, she smiled. I usually am. It comes with being a teacher for 40 years. You learn to read people. What do you read in me right now? Sadness, disappointment, but also resilience. You're hurt by what happened, but you're not broken by it. You know who you are, and that knowledge is protecting you. I reached across the table and took her hand. I'm glad I met you. I'm glad you were brave enough to ask me to coffee, she replied. Not many 68-year-old men have the courage to pursue romance. I almost didn't. I kept thinking I was too old, that dating was for younger people. And yet here we are, planning a cruise to Alaska and enjoying each other's company. Imagine if you'd let that self-limiting belief stop you. That conversation stayed with me. How many other self-limiting beliefs had I internalized? How many times had I let society's expectations of aging dictate my choices? 3 weeks later, I had dinner with Caroline again. She'd flown back to town for a work conference. How's everyone doing? She asked. Patricia is trying too hard to make amends. She calls every day, wants to visit every weekend. I finally had to tell her she was overcorrecting. Caroline laughed. That sounds like Patricia. Thomas is actually doing better. He got a steady job with a tech company, boring work, he says, but reliable income. He stopped talking about get-rich-quick schemes. And Brandon, he made his first payment, $500 right on. Schedule, he also sent me a long letter, handwritten, not typed. That meant something. What did it say? That he's been doing a lot of thinking, that he realized he'd never actually asked me about my life, my experiences, my perspective, that he'd reduced me to a role, grandfather, instead of seeing me as a whole person, and that he wants to change that if I'm willing. Are you? I considered the question. I think so, but it's going to take time. Trust isn't rebuilt overnight. No, it isn't. Caroline paused. Dad, can I ask you something? Why did you keep the properties and investments secret for so long? Because I watched what money did to my own father's family, I said. When he died, he left a moderate estate, maybe $200,000 split between 4 siblings. It destroyed them. They fought over every asset, every piece of furniture, every sentimental item. Lawsuits, grudges, relationships that never recovered. I decided then that my children would never know enough about my assets to fight over them while I was alive. But we'd find out eventually. When you die, the will would be read. True, but by then, hopefully, you'll all be established enough in your own lives that inheritance is a bonus, not a need. And hopefully, I'll have taught you enough about values that you won't destroy each other over money. Do you think that's possible after what happened at dinner? I think Brandon is learning. Patricia is learning. Thomas is learning. You already knew these lessons, which is why I trust you. So yes, I think it's possible. We finished dinner and walked through downtown. The evening was cool, the streets busy with people living their lives, young couples, families, elderly people walking dogs. "Dad, do you ever feel invisible?" Caroline asked suddenly. "What do you mean? Like society stops seeing you once you reach a certain age, like you become part of the scenery rather than a participant?" "Sometimes," I admitted. "Especially professional settings. I consult for my old company, and sometimes younger employees talk over me or dismiss my suggestions without consideration. They assume outdated knowledge comes with gray hair. How do you handle it?" "By proving them wrong," I said simply. "Results speak louder than assumptions. When my outdated suggestions solve their modern problems, they learn to listen. Some of them anyway." We passed a coffee shop where a group of young people sat huddled over laptops. "Do you ever wish you were that age again?" Caroline asked. "Not even a little. Being young was exhausting. All that uncertainty, all that pressure to prove myself, all that anxiety about the future. Now I know who I am. I've made my mistakes, learned my lessons, built my life. There's peace in that. But doesn't it bother you that society values youth over experience?" "Society values lots of foolish things," I said. "That doesn't mean I have to internalize those values. I know what I'm worth." "Margaret knows what she's worth. That's enough." The meeting with my estate attorney, Philip Sanderson, happened on a Wednesday afternoon. We sat in his office, surrounded by law books and the faint smell of old paper. "Walter, I've reviewed your current will and the amendments you're considering. Are you certain about these changes?" "I'm certain. They're significant. Reducing Patricia and Thomas's portions, creating the educational trust for Caroline's children, establishing the charitable foundation. These are substantial decisions. I'm not cutting anyone off, Philip, but I am redistributing according to what I believe is fair and what I believe will do the most good." "Tell me your reasoning." I leaned forward. "Patricia and Thomas both have successful careers and comfortable lives. They don't need large inheritances. They need to know I believe in their ability to support themselves. Brandon will receive his portion when he turns 40, not at my death, which gives him time to mature and prove himself. Caroline's children get education funds because Caroline never asked for anything, and that should be rewarded. And the charitable foundation, that's my legacy. Real estate scholarships for low-income students, that's what I want to be remembered for." Philip made notes. "And the properties? 3 go into the foundation upon my death. 2 go to Caroline with the instruction to maintain them as rentals or sell them as she sees fit. The Maple Street property, Brandon's former house, that one's tricky." "How so?" "I'm thinking about putting it in a trust with Brandon as eventual beneficiary, but with conditions. He maintains steady employment for 5 years. He completes the rent repayment. He demonstrates financial responsibility. If he meets those conditions, the house becomes his at age 35. That's complicated but doable. It's also generous, given what happened." "He's my grandson," I said simply. "I'm angry at him, disappointed in him, but I still want him to succeed. I just want him to earn it this time." Philip drafted the amendments over the next week. I reviewed them carefully, made minor adjustments, and signed them on a Friday afternoon. Walking out of that office, I felt lighter somehow. My affairs were in order. My intentions were clear. My family would inherit not just assets but lessons. 2 months passed. The holidays approached. Patricia called in early November. "Dad, what are your plans for Thanksgiving? Margaret and I are going to her daughter's house in Portland." "Oh," disappointment filled the word. "I was hoping we could all be together, maybe start repairing things." "Patricia, we're repairing things gradually, but I'm not ready for a big family gathering yet. The wounds from that dinner are still too fresh." "I understand. What about Christmas?" "Margaret and I are taking that cruise in December, remember? We'll be gone from the 15th through the 28th. "Oh, right, you mentioned that." She paused. "Dad, I miss you. I miss you too, sweetheart. But I'm also living my life, which is exactly what I told you all I was capable of doing." "Point taken." She laughed softly. "Will you at least send pictures from the cruise?" I will, and Patricia, we'll do dinner when I get back, just you, me, and Glenn, somewhere quiet where we can really talk. I'd like that. The cruise was magnificent. Margaret and I watched glaciers calve, saw whales breach, explored small Alaskan towns, and danced badly to the ship's orchestra. I felt young in a way that had nothing to do with age and everything to do with possibility. You know what I love about this? Margaret said one evening as we watched the sunset from the ship's deck. We're surrounded by people our age doing exactly what we're doing, living fully, exploring, enjoying. Nobody here thinks we're too old for adventure. It's a different world up here, I agreed. It's not a different world, it's just a world that hasn't bought into the myth that life ends at 65. On Christmas Day, somewhere off the coast of British Columbia, Margaret and I exchanged small gifts. She gave me a book on Alaska's history. I gave her a watercolor painting of a glacier we'd seen together. Merry Christmas, Walter. Merry Christmas, Margaret. My phone buzzed with messages. Caroline sent pictures of her kids opening presents. Thomas sent a brief, Merry Christmas, Dad. Hope you're enjoying the cruise. Patricia sent a long message about how much she wished I was there but how happy she was that I was living my life, and Brandon sent a simple text. Merry Christmas, Grandpa. Made the second rent payment. Hope you're having an amazing trip. I showed the messages to Margaret. They're trying, she observed. They are, I agreed. Are you going to let them back in? Eventually, but on my terms, not theirs. They need to understand that relationships with aging parents aren't about control or inheritance. They're about respect and connection. You're a good teacher, Walter. I'm trying to be. We returned from the cruise in late December, tanned and energized. My house felt empty at first, but also peaceful. I'd been gone nearly 2 weeks and nothing had fallen apart. The plants were alive thanks to my neighbor. The mail was neatly stacked. Everything was exactly as I'd left it. I called Caroline first. We're back. The cruise was incredible. Tell me everything. I spent an hour describing glaciers, wildlife, excursions, and the simple joy of waking up somewhere new every day. Caroline listened with genuine interest, asking questions, laughing at my stories. Dad, you sound happy, really happy. I am, sweetheart. I'm 68 years old, and I'm happier than I've been in years. That's wonderful. And it's also proof that you were right at that dinner. You don't need anyone managing your life. You're doing just fine on your own. The dinner with Patricia, Glenn, and me happened in early January at a small Italian restaurant. We met on neutral ground, ordered wine, and talked carefully at first. Dad, I've been seeing a therapist, Patricia said halfway through the meal. To work through some things. What kind of things? Control issues, mostly. She helped me understand that my anxiety about you wasn't really about you, it was about me. About my fear of losing you, of not being able to fix things, of watching you age and feeling helpless. That's very insightful, Patricia. It doesn't excuse what I did. The ambush, the manipulation, trying to control your decisions. But it helps me understand why I did it. And going forward, I'm going to ask instead of assume. I'm going to respect your autonomy even when it scares me. And I'm going to remember that you're my father, not my responsibility. Glenn spoke up. Walter, I owe you an apology too. I went along with Patricia's plan because I didn't want to contradict her, but I knew it was wrong. I should have spoken up. Yes, you should have, I agreed. But I appreciate you saying so now. We finished dinner on better terms than we'd started. Not perfect, not fully healed, but better. Progress, not perfection. In February, Brandon asked if he could take me to lunch. We met at a diner near his new apartment. How's the new place? I asked. Smaller, louder. The upstairs neighbors have a toddler who sounds like he's training for basketball, but it's ours and we're managing. How's the payment plan working out? It's tight, but we're doing it. We canceled some subscriptions, eat out less, drive less. Turns out we were wasting a lot of money without realizing it. Most people are. Grandpa, I wanted to tell you something. I got a promotion at work, more responsibility, more money, and my first thought wasn't now we can upgrade or now we can spend more. It was now we can pay you back faster. Brandon, I never wanted the money. I know, but I need to pay it for me. It's helping me understand value, consequences, responsibility, so thank you for holding me accountable. I studied my grandson across the table. He looked different, older somehow, but in a good way, more settled, more substantial. You're growing up, Brandon. Finally, right? He smiled ruefully. Only took me till almost 30. Better late than never. We talked for 2 hours, really talked, not just exchanged pleasantries. He asked about my time running the company, about my mistakes, about my successes. He asked about Margaret, about the cruise, about my consulting work. He asked about my life, not my assets. As we left, he said, "Can we do this regularly? Lunch, I mean, maybe once a month." I'd like that. Good, because I realized something. I never really knew you. I knew Grandpa, the role, but I didn't know Walter Anderson, the person, and I'd like to fix that if you'll let me. It's March now, 3 months since that disastrous dinner. Things aren't perfect with my family, but they're better. Patricia calls regularly but doesn't hover. Thomas is building a stable life and occasionally asks for advice, not money. Brandon makes his payments and keeps our lunch dates. Caroline remains the steady presence she's always been. And me? I'm still living in my house, still managing my properties, still consulting, still playing tennis, still dating Margaret. I'm proving every day that age is just a number, that 68 doesn't mean irrelevant, and that respect isn't something people should have to wait to inherit. I've learned something through all of this. Family relationships shouldn't be transactional. They shouldn't be about waiting for assets to transfer or waiting for people to become manageable. They should be about mutual respect, genuine connection, and recognizing the full humanity in each other regardless of age. My grandson said I wasn't family. He was wrong, of course, but in a strange way his words gave me a gift. They forced everyone to examine what family really means. Not obligation, not entitlement, not control, but respect, connection, and love freely given. Walter Anderson, I'm 68 years old. I own properties worth millions. I have investments most people never know about, and I have a life that's entirely my own. But more importantly, I have my dignity, my autonomy, and my self-respect. And nobody, not my children, not my grandchildren, not society, gets to take those away from me. That's my story. That's what I wanted to share. And if you're in a similar situation, if your family is treating you like you're incompetent just because you've added a few years, remember this. You built your life, you earned your assets, and you deserve respect. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Thank you for listening. And remember, subscribe to Cheating Story Exposed for more stories about justice, respect, and standing up for what's right.